So, yesterday in my stream, we were talking about this situation. Bloomberg broke the news, and apparently Crystal Dynamics was close to moving Perfect Dark to Take-Two, but negotiations fell apart. In fact, despite the game being cancelled, up until last week, the game was actually still in development and going at least according to plan. It turns out that the game needed another $80 to $90 million in order to actually work. As of right now, that Microsoft had invested double or triple that from what I'm hearing. So a lot of money was invested in this, but Microsoft at some point turned around and said, enough's enough. The investor said, that's it. You need to find investment from other places, and you need to see if you can get that. And so talks started happening with Take-Two, and Take-Two agreed to pay the 80-90 million to complete the journey of the game. However, there was a catch, and that catch turned out to be that Take-Two said, we will pay you 80-90 million, but we also want the IP. Not just the license of the IP, which, in fairness, they can do what they want once they've got the license. They can make movies, they can make anime, they can, do all sorts of content around it because they have the license to the IP. But no, they wanted the full IP, and Microsoft said, no, we're not willing to, get rid of the IP, because Microsoft has slowly and surely been building up this war chest, and they're trying to get a collection of IPs. So what they will do eventually is, hey, we're not going to do anything with these games. This is like 10 years down the line, potentially. But if someone wants to come along and license the IP, it's just going to be free money for us, right? They do the work, we get the rewards, everyone's happy. Pretty much just like anyone else. I mean, Sony recently has been licensing out their IPs to other publishers who are, releasing those games, mainly smaller titles, but it's still bringing in cash revenue for Sony for IPs that they just have no interest in working on anymore. But they're providing the option to other publishers. You can take the license for the IP and continue doing it. So Microsoft told them, and I know a lot of people are upset with Microsoft right now because they're saying Microsoft could have just sold the IP. And I said the same thing last night, but then I got thinking, why would Microsoft want to sell the IP? Their whole business right now is gobbling up as many studios as they can, but the whole purpose of the IP, the studios themselves don't matter to Microsoft. It's the IP. And that's the value, because they can maintain and retain that IP and then say, right, Capcom, do you want to license this IP? Great, go build it. Make it, you take a portion, we get a portion, everyone's happy. And so that's the idea of licensing and how it's actually worthwhile business venture. But obviously Take-Two decided that they want to turn around and have everything. And obviously, because Microsoft said no, an agreement couldn't be had. And so Crystal Dynamics is now losing a bunch of staff. They're having mass layoffs because this project finally got cancelled. Now, there is another thing to this, and then this is the, point that I was trying to get at. This is some petty crap. Microsoft needs to let the IP go. They have no obligation to let it go. They have owned Perfect Dark for over 20 years and have done nothing with it. See, that's not the point. Anyone can come at any point and say, hey, Microsoft, we want to license out Banjo and Kazooie. We want to license out Perfect Dark and make a game. And Microsoft will not say no, because number one, that company is basically building it. Number two, Microsoft is basically getting paid for doing almost nothing other than licensing the work to them. And number three, the game is guaranteed to come to the licensed platform, which is an Xbox. So for Microsoft, it's a win-win situation. They should have sold it to Take-Two. And obviously, I said Take-Two could have just licensed the game. So it's a bit of a weird one, and at least now we have a lot more context as to what was happening, just like Microsoft did with Tango Gamework, where they tried to save the company by, they didn't want to close it entirely and just let the name die. It does have a prestigious name. They eventually found an agreement with Krafton, and they sold the studio and kept its name, and everyone's happy. obviously Microsoft retained a bunch of the IPs because that's what's important to Microsoft. It's the IP. If someone wants to come along and make another Evil Within, they can license the IP and get it. Microsoft is all about licensing at this point. It's sad that Perfect Dark has now officially, I guess, been cancelled after Take-Two has said, we're out, we're not going to give you the 80-90 million. I also feel like Take-Two was also taking the piss because they thought they had Microsoft in the corner and they were going to go for the kill, and Microsoft clearly said no. It's not like Microsoft couldn't afford the 80-90 million to pump in and get it done, but at the end of the day, investors rule what happens, and they had a budget. They exceeded their budget. The investors said, we're not investing anymore into this product. You need to find investment from outside. And so it seems like they tried to do that, and they almost had it with Take-Two. But the question is, folks, who do you think is more to blame here? Do you think Take-Two is right to want to own the IP entirely for a 90 million? Or could they have just licensed it and then made a whole bunch of stuff with it? Or do you think, let me know in the comment section below. I'm really eager to find out what your thoughts are, because this one's an interesting one. I was looking forward to Perfect Dark. I know we saw the trailer, and that trailer was supposed to be real, then it was fake, then it came out and said part of it was real, part of it was fake, and then they were like, yeah, it's kind of a bit of a duct tape situation. It was more like the Anthem E3 trailer, which was kind of real, but not real. But yeah, it's a real shame that Take-Two decided that they are going to pull out and that they weren't going to continue. I think they should have just got the license. They could have done a lot with the license. It's a prestigious license, and they could have actually delivered something really good, considering the game was, quite far in. Well, I don't know how far in development it was, but from what we're reading, it was well into it. And all they needed was another 100 million, basically, to finish the game off. And that's hopefully, by the way. I wonder if they would have actually finished it within that 100 million. But to demand the whole IP takes a whole load of kahunas. And I guess these companies now are thinking that Microsoft, being in the position they are, they kind of look weak. But Microsoft hasn't been in a weak position for a while now. They've actually been in a position of dominance. They hold all the cards. They hold a lot of IPs. And at the end of the day, they dictate what's going on. And as we've seen with Microsoft's shift in the whole console wars, in the whole way that hardware is, digital gaming is, everyone is almost bending to the will of Microsoft. Whatever Phil Spencer says, the industry just, even if it's slowly, molds in that direction. And they are changing the industry one step at a time. And there's really nothing anyone can actually do about it. Nintendo's doing their own thing, I get it. But even Sony themselves are now seeing the ways of what Microsoft is doing and how much revenue it's bringing into them. Xbox has probably been the most profitable right now it's ever been. And the numbers show for it. Sure, people are going to say, but the console sells. But that's not stopping the software revenue selling. And so when it comes to Xbox, they are exactly where they wanted to be when they started this journey in 2016. They've just finally come to where they wanted to be. And ABK was a huge factor in that. But this situation with Perfect Dark is crazy. I hope before people get laid off, they can resolve it. But for Take-Two to have the arrogance and the kahunas to try and turn around to Microsoft and say, you either sell us the IP or we're walking, and give them that ultimatum. Did they honestly think that Microsoft was going to turn around and say, okay, I'm going to do exactly as you say because we need money? You're talking about a $3 trillion company here. They don't need money. They print money. They probably make that 100 million overnight. It's really, really that simple. But the reality is, this game seems like now it's going to be fully cancelled. It's insane it was still being developed. And my heart goes out to those people losing their jobs, because apparently Crystal Dynamics now is going to have, a big layoff for all the staff that's actually working on this project that no longer, where a project no longer exists. And again, as you can see here, The deal collapsed, at least in part because of the companies involved were unable to come to terms over long-term ownership of the Perfect Dark franchise. And people are going to say, you know, it came in over here. Take-Two saw that jawline and was like, nah, not today. Why on earth would Xbox want to sell a franchise like Perfect Dark? It doesn't make any sense. Wait, they're basically trying to get rid of Perfect Dark? Why, and why would Take-Two of all companies want it? Crystal Dynamics IP dispute? Who would have thought? Super unfortunate. You know, it just continues. Oh, this story just keeps getting worse. I think, you know, Take-Two should have just taken the licensing deal. I think that would have been profitable for both. Okay, that's just funny. It just continues, right? Obviously, the fact that Microsoft invested like, you know, 200-300 million into this game and it's nowhere near completion clearly tells you that it had a troubled development. So the investors probably were right within their minds to put a stop to their investment. But I think what Take-Two did was a shame. I probably, if I was in Microsoft's shoes, I probably would do the same. I would retain ownership because at some point someone is going to want to revive Perfect Dark, and hopefully they can continue where they left off. Make a few changes as needed, especially to that jawline, and push forward and create a game that we're hoping to see. Probably not within the next 10 years now, but it's a shame. Anyway, folks, let me know what you think in the comment section below. And if you've enjoyed this content and enjoyed this discussion, do consider leaving a like, hitting that subscribe, and hit that bell to stay up to date with all content I release. There is a new feature for YouTube on mobile platforms now where you can hit the hype button, and that will provide you with 3 hypes a week, and that really helps the videos get noticed. It is only for smaller channels, although YouTube says 500k and below. Not really sure how 500k is a small channel, but if you did enjoy the content, do consider dropping a hype. It really would help the channel and video get noticed, and help with the YouTube algorithm to grow the channel. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Remain legend.